Well, it is very nearly the end, but the moment has indeed been prepared for. Welcome back to Doctor Who, the classic series action figures, a history. In the 14th episode of this series, we're going to be taking a look at some rather recent and familiar releases as a part of the B&M exclusive line of Doctor Who action figures, released between 2016 and 2018. Of course, if you haven't already, please do check out the previous episodes as a part of this series, taking a look at each and every classic series Doctor Who action figure since the very beginning of the line back in 2008. And boy, haven't we came quite a long way since then, as here we have some of the most recent figures to add to the classic series Doctor Who collection, and for that reason the series may start to take an ever so slightly different tone at this point, as the vast majority of these figures are no doubt a part of your collection at the minute because they are very recent additions, and for that reason these reviews may be ever so slightly briefer compared to that of some of the earlier reviews as a part of this series. But not only that, it is because the B&M exclusive series consists pretty much entirely at this point with repaints of pre-existing Doctor Who action figures, making variants of action figures that we've seen already as a part of the line. Therefore, this episode is going to be filled with the usual variants of Doctors, variants of Cyberman, a new edition of the Brigadier, and of course some slight changes of companions that we've seen already within the series. But not only that, rather excitingly, the return of the classic TARDIS exterior boxes previously seen as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. So yes, by this point the line isn't as exciting as it once was, and that is because the interest in the line at this point has perhaps died down since the popular days a number of years ago. However, there is still some rather exciting variants to add to the collection, and some re-releases of figures that were previously rather hard to come by. So as per usual, I hope you enjoy this showcase of Doctor Who classic series action figure history. The B&M exclusive action figure collector sets of 2016 seen a new opportunity for fans of Doctor Who action figures to collect some classic series monsters and villains that appeared within the early days of the classic series line, featuring a Ice Warrior from the 2nd Doctor era, a Zygon from the 4th Doctor era, previously released as a part of Wave 1, and finally a Invasion Cyberman, released as a part of the Age of Steel wave. However, this time round, he did not come with a gun accessory. The B&M line of 2016 also seen the release of a 3rd Doctor collector set, featuring some rather exciting variants of pre-existing sculpts from the classic series line, and I think that this is the moment where classic series Doctor Who fans started to have a little bit of interest within the B&M series, because we were starting to see brand new variants of costumes that we hadn't seen before within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, and possibly piqued hope for new variants in the line to come. The first figure of the set is a re-release of Roger Delgado, which admittedly is the least exciting figure of the set because we've already seen this sculpt at least 2 times before within the classic series. This time round it does seem to be a little bit different than the previous exclusive releases, as the whole costume itself seems to have a bit more of a glossier plastic compared to the previous releases. However, generally, as you would expect, the figure overall does pretty much remain exactly the same, and the likeness is still a pretty decent one to that of Roger Delgado, with a slightly more tanned skin colour. However, for a B&M set, still has an impressive set of paint application. And then we have a variant of the 3rd Doctor, this time round in his blue velvet costume, as seen throughout Invasion of the Dinosaurs, a variation on the 3rd Doctor's costume that was wanted for a number of years within the exclusive series. This time round there has been a little bit of a revision to the paint apps on the head, and it's one of those Marmite designs, you either like it or hate it. Some of the facial expression this time round has been toned down from the previous exclusive releases, especially around the eyes, and the actual paint application application on the hair seems to be much more of a creamy colour as opposed to the bright, vibrant white that we've seen on the previous Third Doctor releases over the many years. As for the actual costume itself, of course this remains exactly the same sculpt to all of the previous releases. This time round the actual jacket is sculpted in a blue plastic and we have a lighter blue underneath along with a brown tie, and then of course the bottom of the figure pretty much remains exactly the same with some darker trousers and the black glossy shoes at the very bottom. Then we have what is probably the most exciting figure of the set, the third ever variant of Jo Grant, this time round in her costume from the Time Monster, which uses the base sculpt of the figure as seen within the Forbidden Planet exclusive Three Doctors set. Of course, previously within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, we have seen a Jo Grant from both the Three Doctors as well as the Claws of Axos, so naturally it is nice to add a new variant to the collection. However, this time round the costume is a little bit bizarre to say the least, and not necessarily screen accurate to what we see within the story. This time round, the blue dress sculpt has been repainted to be a lighter brown, and then we have this wonderfully 70s pattern added over the top, along with a yellow neck piece, which is once again pretty ugly indeed. And then of course moving down to the bottom half of the figure, Jo is wearing tights this time round, and we have the inclusion of some boots, which are of course a bright yellow, once again a repaint from the original dark blue of the Three Doctors set. And then we have the likeness to Katie Manning. Now, much like all of the previous Jo Grant figures, her eyes are absolutely massive and she looks incredibly excited for some reason. However, on this figure, it seems to be taken to another level of excitement because her eyes are absolutely bulging, literally out of her skull. And then we have the lips underneath, which are also very plump and large. And of course, as per usual, the hair has been sculpted in a rather nice design. However, unfortunately, due to the removable limb feature that was seen on the Three Doctors set, as you can see, turning the figure onto the side, the hair does in fact kind of sit on the neck. Very unusually, it's almost floating on top of the shoulders, which is a little bit odd. However, overall it is a nice sculpt, but I can recall the paint application on this figure being incredibly hit and miss, and I think that this figure is kind of one of the best that I could find in the shop at the time. However, it still looks a little bit unusual. For those fans who didn't collect the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, this set was an absolutely brilliant opportunity to add a variant of the Third Doctor to their collection, along with a companion to go alongside him, and one of his most iconic villains. For the recommended retail of only around $16.99, this set was absolutely perfect and a brilliant bargain. However, that isn't it for the Third Doctor B&M exclusive 2016 collector set, because this is of course a series about collecting Doctor Who action figures, and with it being Doctor Who, nothing is ever quite that simple, as we have a second version of this set that was released that isn't as known about by Doctor Who collectors, as it is virtually exactly the same to the one that I've just taken a look at, however with a very minor change. Now, for those of you that have watched the previous episodes as a part of this series, when I've taken a look at the Three Doctors collector set and the Claws of Axos collector set, you will know that there is two ever so slight variations of the Jo Grant sculpt, one of which that is smiling and happy, and the other that is more serene and normal looking. It turns out that this set in fact utilises both of those sculpts, where we have one that is serious, which I don't own, and one of which that is happy, which is the more common version. I don't intend to get this figure anytime soon, hence why it's been drafted in using modern technology, because quite frankly it is that minor. I don't want to spend that much money on it because it's not something that I will notice on the shelf when on display, and at the end of the day I have better things to spend my money on. Utilising the two other variations of Jo Grant from the Three Doctors and the Claws of Axos, you can see how the two different sculpts vary on an actual action figure. So here we have the happier version, and here we have the more serious variation. And I think that back in the day, this was very unusual, because it was only something that I noticed a few years ago, having had the figures in my collection for a good bulk of time already. And normally when they do something like this, an ever so subtle change, it will be advertised when the product is being sold. It will be a new feature that you have a brand new head sculpt that is a more serious version of Jo Grant, as opposed to the overly happy version seen on the original. However, it seemed to be something that was almost slipped through by accident in a way. However, I kind of accepted it as just a minor change that occurred. And then when I found out that there was two different versions of the same figure within the B&M series, I thought that that was even more unusual. I imagine that the more serious version is in fact rarer than the smiling version from what I've heard. However, if you are able to track down that more serious version, then well done you. Who knows, maybe after watching this video you'll go back to take a look at your collection and find out that you indeed have a serious looking Jo Grant on your shelf from the Time Monster. It's very odd, and I think there must be a story behind it, and I just wonder what it is. It is without a doubt probably one of the most unusual things that has occurred within the classic series line of Doctor Who action figures. However, a niche figure to add to the collection if you have it. However, one of which that isn't particularly too exciting if you don't. And I suppose you could, I guess, make a custom if you really wanted a serious looking Jo Grant with the rather ugly looking Twix style dress from the Time Monster. The B&M exclusive collector sets of 2017 seen the release of a 4th Doctor collector set. Around the same lines as the previously released 3rd Doctor set, this set features a different variation of the 4th Doctor, this time round a take on his Pyramids of Mars outfit, previously seen within the Forbidden Planet collector series, along with a companion figure, being of course Leela, as portrayed by Louise Jameson, this time round a variant on her costume as seen throughout the Invasion of Time, as well as the image of the Fendal. And then rather excitingly, and arguably the highlight of the set, we get to see another re-release of K9, but this time round after the failure release that did of course come alongside the Season 18 4th Doctor, we finally get to see a K9 figure within classic series colours. And for $16.99, quite a lot of classic series fans bought this set for this little figure alone. I think that after the release of the 3rd Doctor the previous year and some of the facial detailing being missing from that figure, and then we have the release of this 4th Doctor, I kind of started to realise that perhaps the B&M sets weren't necessarily the highest quality form of Doctor Who action figure, as here we have the 4th Doctor, and of course, comparing this figure to the previously released Pyramids of Mars 4th Doctor, there is an obvious difference in the likeness. He has a very unusual orange skin tone, which makes it look like he's very tanned indeed, those very vibrant white teeth, and of course those rather unhealthy looking bright red lips, and of course those very alert eyes as well. There's just something about this sculpt, or at least something about this paint application, that I really didn't like that much back in the day, it has to be said, and I certainly look back on it now and not like it at all. Looking at the actual costume itself, it's pretty much exactly the same to your other 4th Doctor figures. You have the inclusion of the yellow waistcoat in the very middle, along with of course the cravat, which is now a slightly lighter coloured pink colour, as opposed to the original orange from the Forbidden Planet exclusive Pyramids of Mars 4th Doctor, and at the very bottom we have the inclusion of course the 4th Doctor's trousers, and of course the shoes at the very bottom. This time round the scarf does seem to be a little bit more vibrant than the previous Forbidden Planet exclusive version, and the same kind of applies for the jacket as well. It seems to be a rather glossy brown compared to that of the matte brown seen on the Pyramids of Mars 4th Doctor, released in the early days of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. Comparing it to the original version, quite frankly, I think that the B&M one looks a little bit like a knockoff, and I definitely prefer the original version that also came with a Pyramids of Mars control bank that is now exclusive to that release. Taking a look at the Leela figure of the set, once again, is kind of a similar situation to the 4th Doctor figure, where this exact figure was released as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, and of course she was released originally alongside the Sontaran Commander Store from the Invasion of Time, and a number of different colour changes have occurred on this new B&M variation. So to start off with, of course the actual clothing itself is now a much darker colour compared to the original cream version that was seen within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. The general skin tone of the entire figure has also now changed. The new B&M version is now more darker, much like the 4th Doctor figure, and the original version is a little bit more natural. Moving down to the very bottom, we do also have the inclusion of the boots, and once again on the brand new version as a part of the B&M 2017 set, they are now a lot darker compared to the lighter version within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, also seem to have a few more intricate paint apps. Moving up to the very top of the figure, of course we have the likeness to Louise Jameson. Something that I really do love of this brand new version, and it is an incredibly subtle change, is that on this version here she has blue irises, and on this version here she has a light brown iris. And I do believe that this is because either in her first ever debut within the Face of Evil she was wearing some contact lenses, and over time those were removed from Doctor Who stories depending on what order they filmed the stories in. So it's nice to see that kind of reflected within action figure form, I suppose. And then we of course have the hair as well, which has also seen a little bit of an upgrade. On the brand new version it does seem to be much darker compared to the lighter browns seen on the Forbidden Planet exclusive version, and to be honest, once again this is a nice variation, and I think that both of them look equally just as nice. I think that certainly the Leela figure is the more effective re-release in this set compared to that of the Fourth Doctor. However, back in the days of 2017, we didn't care about the Fourth Doctor and Leela. We were only here for the classic series variation of K9, which is of course a major upgrade from the original one that came with the Season 18 Fourth Doctor. This time round we have a much darker colour scheme compared to the one from the new series. We do of course pretty much have exactly the same detailing, including the K9 lettering on the side, the darker pillars at the very bottom, and the computer bank at the top is now a black colour as opposed to a silver. The same also applies for the screen at the very back, now with a very thick black line around it. The tubing section on the neck, now a much darker colour. Side to side, comparing this to the original version that came with the Season 18 Fourth Doctor, I think that this is certainly a change that is immediately worth it, and what is incredibly annoying is that these paint application changes were very easy back in the day of this Season 18 Fourth Doctor release, and why they didn't do it back then absolutely baffles me. However, this K9 alone was the reason to buy this set, and it was certainly a worthy change. Once again, I think that the Fourth Doctor set did appeal to an audience who didn't collect the original Forbidden Planet exclusive action figures, meaning that once again they could add another incarnation of the Doctor, along with two of his companions, to their collection without needing to pay the extensive prices of the original Forbidden Planet exclusive series. And to be honest, for a set for only £16, this set was definitely worth the money, especially if you hadn't got those previous releases, and naturally if you were a collector of the previous releases, you also had a brand new Classic Series K9 to add to the collection that was finally in the Classic Series colours. Therefore, it was kind of a win-win situation all round. To accompany the 2017 Fourth Doctor set, we also seen another Classic Series set released, this time round once again entitled The Monsters set, featuring the Tomb Cyber Controller, an Attack Cyberman, and a new series Sontaran, which let's just take him away because he's not that exciting. The 2017 Monsters set, I think, started something that would then take precedence in the later years of the B&M exclusive collector sets. We are starting to see character options use their old pre-existing sculpts in a rather strategic manner, starting off with the collect and build Cyber Controller that was originally a collect and build back in the day of 2008, and naturally had become incredibly rare over the years. And the re-release of that, although quite controversial to some of the more eager collectors from the old days, was a welcome addition to a lot of people's collections who didn't manage to get the figure back when it was originally released. And also, very excitingly, the Attack Cyberman, a brand new Classic Series variation of Cyberman, using the original parts from the previously released Rogue Cyberman that come alongside Perry from Attack of the Cybermen. However, this time round cleaned up to be a fresh and brand new Cyberman design. For the most part, the Tomb Cyber Controller is exactly the same to the previous version, because there isn't really that much to change. The boiler suit as per usual is silver, however the piping on the limbs has in fact received a little bit of a darker paint app. The major changes did of course take place within the head. The majority of it is a much darker grey colour, along with thick black lines around the sides of the mouth and the eyes. And of course in the middle of this we have the inclusion of the silver paint application, bringing out those facial features. The brain on the top of the head has also seen a little bit of an upgrade, now including a darker colour of orange, and of course the lighter grey veins on the top, as well as a more faded design from the helmet into the actual brain section, and of course a silver paint app around the midpoint. Now, as I mentioned in the very early episodes of this series where I'd taken a look at the Age of Steel Cybermen wave, I don't particularly like this paint application on the Tomb Cyber Controller. Even if it is more accurate to the one as seen on TV, it's hard to tell because it's a black and white episode anyway. I just think the original collect and build looks better visually. I think that this one is very nice, and if you manage to get this one, then absolutely brilliant. It's nice to have it as a part of your collection, but I think the original one just looks better, and the colours suit the figure format a lot more, because the grey on this one just seems to be a little bit too dark. And then, of course, the final Classic Series figure of this set is the Attack Cyberman, which was a welcome addition to everybody's collection, regardless of if you collected the old Classic Series action figure line, or if you just wanted some new figures to add to your collection, having never bought classic figures before, because this is a brand new variant and a figure that looks very similar to the Earthshock Cyberman from Wave 2, that as later became a rather rare figure from that wave, probably the rarest of that wave in fact, due to the popularity of people wanting to army build it. So a really lovely figure with some really impressive details that once again have been retained from that previous version. The helmet is absolutely gorgeous, including the clear transparent plastic around the jawline emphasising the mouth section, and I also love the inclusion of the black paint taps on the eyes as well. As usual, the boiler suit features a brilliant amount of detail, and this time round the gun has in fact been mildly improved to feature a slightly more darker colour scheme as opposed to the regular silver. And then of course the rest of the body of the boiler suit has been given a rather design to emphasise the mesh and the piping. The most noticeable difference is at the very bottom. We have the inclusion of the lace-up boots as opposed to the moon boots seen on the Earthshock Cyberman, which is a lovely inclusion as originally seen on the Rogue Cyberman release, and makes for a good variant to add to the Cybermen 80s collection. And as per usual, excellent. Great set for people who didn't manage to get the original Classic Series action figures, and a nice variant to add to the collection. However, it still baffles me to this day. Why on earth package two new Cybermen alongside a Sontaran? Just release another Cyberman, even if it's a new series one, and call it a Cybermen set. It's much better than just including a random, pathetic Sontaran. It baffles me. And it doesn't help that I don't like the design either. The following year, being 2018, seen a change in the B&M exclusive action figure line, as character options upped the game and released the first ever B&M exclusive TARDIS. We've not seen the use of this sculpt since the Forbidden Planet exclusive series many years ago. Even bigger surprise is that they've decided to use the non-stacked roof from the original 4th Doctor TARDIS from season 14, in fact the rarest of the 3 TARDISes released as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. And this was when the B&M line started to get a lot of attention indeed, and when the scalpers on eBay started to get a lot of money from buying lots of stock and selling it for extortionate prices, because hey, we love the 21st century. That's entirely sarcasm, by the way. This set does of course feature another variation of the 3rd Doctor, this time round in his red 3 Doctors outfit, alongside apparently a TARDIS from the same story. The recommended retail for this set was $19.99, and due to the removal of the electronics, it was a lot cheaper compared to the £35 that you would pay as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series when they released the 1st, 4th and 7th Doctor TARDISes. The 3rd Doctor figure of the set is also a major improvement from the previously released Blue Velvet version from the Invasion of the Dinosaurs. This time round we have a return to the more Forbidden Planet exclusive variation of paint taps on the 3rd Doctor's head, this time emphasising the eyes and actually making them stand out, as opposed to the original 3rd Doctor from Invasion of the Dinosaurs, where for some reason his eyes seem to seep into his face. And also the most noticeable difference is that the hair has now returned to the much more vibrant white colour seen within the previous Forbidden Planet exclusive releases. A welcome return, and certainly looks a lot better than the Invasion of the Dinosaurs figure. Moving down to the costume now, as you can see it is exactly the same sculpt to every other 3rd Doctor figure. The blazer itself has been sculpted in a red plastic and has been given a really lovely black highlight over the top, emphasising the lapels as well as the patterning on the button sections, even including the upper pocket at the top. In between this, we do also have the inclusion of the shirt with the frills, as well as the cravat sculpt. However, all of this has been painted white, as I don't believe he had a cravat or a bow tie within the Three Doctors, so they kind of just painted it all one colour, just to kind of make it all blend into one. It doesn't particularly work, however, I don't mind too much. Moving down to the bottom half of the figure, it is once again exactly what you would expect from a regular Third Doctor, with the lighter grey trousers and the glossy black shoes. And then we move on to the very exciting TARDIS release, featuring a very vibrant blue, and the brightest blue in fact to ever be featured on a classic series TARDIS so far. And I think that as a variation it does definitely work. I like the way that we have this darker wash that has been applied over the top, which is something of which there was even lacking on the original Forbidden Planet exclusive releases. This time round the TARDIS was in fact going through quite a lot of damage and repair during this era, therefore the plinth of the box had just been painted rather unusually in a thick black paint, which doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the actual box, and it does look a little bit unusual. However, it makes this TARDIS look a little bit more unique, I suppose. We do also have the inclusion of the pull to open sign. This time round it does have a black background and a white text, which does differ from the original version. The same does also apply for the police public call box signage at the very top, this time round once again with the darker black in the background and the white text over the top, with once again a wash applied over this. One of the things that is a reoccurring theme with the B&M TARDIS releases is that the plastic that is used does seem to be a little bit cheaper and a little bit more waxy. Therefore, overall, the TARDISes do seem to have a much more glossy and plasticky overall look to them, as opposed to the much more matte design of the Forbidden Planet exclusive releases, generally making them feel a little bit cheaper and look a little bit cheaper as well, which is a bit unfortunate. However, it can't really be helped for the $19.99 price tag. And generally it's just nice to see a classic series TARDIS within the collection that is a new variation upon the previous 3 TARDIS boxes released. Out of all the B&M Doctor TARDIS sets released so far, the Third Doctor and TARDIS from the Three Doctors does seem to be the rarest of them all. Therefore, if you do get the opportunity to buy this one, I certainly recommend doing so, because it features a nice variant of the Third Doctor and an equally just as nice TARDIS variation to add to the collection. And naturally it's just great to see another TARDIS box, regardless of the obvious inaccuracies, which follows through all of the classic series TARDIS box releases. As I'm sure you are all aware, 2018 did also see the release of another classic series 3-pack, this time round once again reusing sculpts from previous Doctor Who action figures, however in a rather creative manner, seeing a brand new variation of the Brigadier, this time round from Spearhead from Space and arguably also from the Second Doctor era as well, alongside the Fourth Doctor from the Talons of Weng Chiang using the Third Doctor's body, and of course a brand new variation of Auton, originally released within the Enemies of the Three Doctors set. This figure was always a funny release, because naturally before we got a Brigadier figure back in the day, and when people used to make customs, they always used to use the Captain Jack Harkness from Series 1 as a base, and now character options are using just that, the Series 1 Captain Jack. However, this time round not a light blue colour, however a sandy colour has been used for the entirety of the Brigadier's costume, and I must say it works rather well. At the very bottom we do have the inclusion of a dark brown shoe, and then moving up to the top we get the impression of course his uniform with the red band at the side, a little bit of army ranking stuff towards the side as well, and even the shoulder pads including a few badges that have been highlighted using a bronzish paint tap, which is a very nice touch. Head of the figure is from the original Claws of Axos collector set featuring the Brigadier with his beret, which once again has been painted in a rather sandy looking colour, however it does seem to be a bit more grey compared to that of the original version. In fact, rather interestingly, comparing both of these figures side by side, I think this is the difference essentially in one picture of what the B&M line is compared to the original Forbidden Planet exclusive series. As you can quite obviously see, the likeness of the Brigadier on the Claws of Axos set Brigadier is a lot sharper compared to the B&M version. His eyes seem to be a lot sloppier on this version, and the paint application overall just seems to be very thick. And of course another piece of detail missing from this version is we do have the unit badge badge fully printed on this version of the Brigadier. However, on this one it has just been replicated by using a few dots. Naturally, for the recommended retail price of $16.99, you cannot expect the quality of the Forbidden Planet exclusive collector sets, and that is not to say that this new Brigadier isn't any good. It is a great variant to add to the shelf, especially alongside the second and early era Third Doctor. It really makes for a good variation. However, this is just an example of the differences in paint apps over the years between Forbidden Planet and the B&M series, and obviously the superiority of the original version. Now, I was incredibly excited to see a Talons of Weng-Chiang variation of the Fourth Doctor, and I never quite thought of using the Third Doctor's sculpt, and now you see it, it makes complete sense, and I think that for a budget figure, once again, this works incredibly well. Not really going into the costume in too much detail, because we do of course have the boots here at the very bottom. On the first version, this is of course the boot sculpt that has been painted to look like a shoe, and then we do have the cloak over the top of this, patterning over it, and the blazer itself has been painted a light brown. We do also have the inclusion of the hands that have been painted a light grey to give the impression of gloves. And then of course we also have the retool in the middle of this section where we have the waistcoat underneath painted a light brown, and the rather sloppy inclusion of the paint application of the tie also in the very middle. Flipping the cloak around to the back, we also get further examples of that rotten-ish paint application design, which once again isn't too accurate to what is seen throughout the actual story, but for a budget set it does work quite well. As you all probably know, I am a massive fan of the Talons of Weng-Chiang, and over the many years of the Classic Series line of action figures, we did see a lot of Classic Series stories favoured over others. For example, Dalek stories, or the Pyramids of Mars, or Remembrance of the Daleks, all of which did see quite a large amount of action figures dedicated for them. And I do think that the Talons of Weng-Chiang is one of those episodes that kind of got done dirty within the Classic Series line. I think it always deserved a 4-pack or even a 5-pack, including Lee Hens Chang, Jagon Lightfoot, and of course a Victorian version of both Leela and the Fourth Doctor, using an actual proper sculpt with the inclusion of the cane, as well as of course the hat on the top, which sadly we never got to see. And hey, wouldn't it have been brilliant if they even included a giant rat? And then we have the third and final figure of the 1970s set. It is another Auton from the Third Doctor era. Once again, using the Captain Jack Harkness from Series 1 body as a base, time round painted an incredibly glossy grey, with the inclusion of silver shoes at the very bottom. Unlike the original version from the Third Doctor Enemies set, we do have the inclusion of the gun, which has been simplified down this time round. We don't have any more intricate details within this, of the dots or anything like that. We can expect this from a budget set, and we do not have the inclusion of the spearhead accessory or the inclusion of the swappable arm. Of course, at the very top we do also get the inclusion of your standard Auton head, has in fact been sculpted in a rather nice waxy plastic, which for only the Autons this is in fact very effective, considering that they are indeed made of plastic. Overall, I do think that the 1970s set is in fact a really fun set, and I think that if you are a fan of this era of the show, then this set is absolutely perfect for you, and generally this set is worth it alone for that variation of the Fourth Doctor from the Talons of Weng-Chiang, because it's pretty much the closest that we are ever going to get to seeing that costume other than doing your own customization. However, I do recommend buying the 2019 version of this set as opposed to the 2018 version, which I will be covering more of in a second. However, once again, for the recommended retail of around $16.99 to $19.99, this set was incredibly worth it because it's such a great price and an absolute bargain, and a good opportunity for those people who collected the original Forbidden Planet exclusive series to add 3 brand new figures to their collection that previously hasn't been released before. Next up, here we go again. Haven't we already taken a look at this one? It's the 1970s collector set, released a few months later after its original release. A format that we would also see being used with the Big Finish Dr. Dalek 2-packs that are of course also B&M exclusives, and a format that collectors seem to either like or hate, seeing virtually exactly the same thing released again, however with some ever so slight differences. Of course, for collectors that like to see every single release added to their shelf, this is an absolute pain in the arse. However, for those collectors that missed out on the original run, this makes for a perfect opportunity to add these figures to your shelf once again. However, generally has a money-making scheme written all over it. So let's take a look at these completely different figures for a second time round. So first up we have the Brigadier. This figure now has a slightly lighter sandy colour that has been applied to the uniform, and other than that is exactly the same. Next up we have the 4th Doctor from the Talons of Weng-Chiang. Again, now for those of you that will recall, when I've taken a look at the first 1970s collector set, there was the rather unusual circumstances where they wished to have Tom Baker wearing shoes and they used the 3rd Doctor sculpt of the 3rd Doctor wearing boots, when a 3rd Doctor wearing shoes does in fact exist and it has been used as a part of the classic series action figure line on multiple occasions before. Well, you guessed it, the second version of the 4th Doctor from the Talons of Weng-Chiang uses the shoe sculpt, and it makes you think, did they have this plan all along and they decided to release the boot version as the original version that is clearly not the very good version, and then release the better version second, so the people who got the original version then feel the need to buy the second version, and hey ho, you've just lost £15 to £20 on another set that technically you already own. We have the shoes that have been painted glossy black and basically are not that exciting. We've seen the sculpt on multiple occasions before, and of course the blazer itself has also received an ever so slight paint application upgrade. It is now a more reddish colour compared to the lighter brown seen on the original version. The waistcoat is now also a slightly darker colour, and we do also have the paint application of the whiter frills at the ends of the arms, which admittedly are a rather nice touch. And to finish off this figure, we also have the paint application of a lighter brown highlight to emphasise the curls on the top of Tom Baker's head. And that is pretty much it for the 4th Doctor. Admittedly, it is a good variant. It's just a shame that it is the second variant of the figure as opposed to being the first version. I think the one way to make this set a little bit better for fans that have already got the first set would have perhaps been to change the Auton, make him have a brown boiler suit as opposed to lighter grey, just to make it noticeably different compared to the original version of the set. However, for those of us that like to collect each and every classic Doctor Who action figure, I think it is fair to say that this one was a little bit of a pain in the arse. And once again, a massive thank you to Macaulay Carnes for providing photos of this collector set, as I do not have it as a part of my collection because I couldn't bring myself to spend £15 to £20 on some small shoes for Tom Baker. Although admittedly, given how much I like the Talons of Weng-Chiang, I should probably do that at some point and track it down eventually. And we now enter the year of 2019, which does of course only mean one thing, that this series of looking back on the classic series Doctor Who action figures is very nearly over. It's been an incredible look back on Doctor Who toy history, however it's not over just yet, as we've got a few more B&M Action figure re-releases to take a look at, starting off with the first set of 2019 being the 4th Doctor regenerated alongside the Season 12 TARDIS, seeing once again the reuse of the original 4th Doctor TARDIS sculpt with the non-stacked roof alongside the 4th Doctor regenerated, originally released as a part of the 4th Doctor time capsule set, featuring of course the head sculpt that was only seen within that set, which I never got back in the day, so naturally I was very excited to see this set released. Much like the previously released 3rd Doctor TARDIS, this TARDIS does once again share a couple of flaws seen on that previous edition, where generally due to the plastic used it does look a little bit cheap and almost glossy in its design, and it looks more like plastic as opposed to the matte paint job seen on the original Forbidden Planet exclusive releases. However, what is nice to see this time round is it does look less plasticky than the original 3rd Doctor TARDIS release, and I think that that is solely down to the colour of blue used very unusually. Much like the previous 3rd Doctor TARDIS release, once again a wash has been applied over the top of this to make the TARDIS box generally quite weathered. Of course, there is also the updated inclusion of signage on the pull to open sign, now with a black border, and we do also have the police public call box signage on the top of the box, now updated to have a white background and a black text, pretty much a reverse from the previous TARDIS within this series. Also, the lamp at the very top of the box has now been given a rather unusual white tint, which is unique to this TARDIS and this TARDIS only. Overall, it is a nice inclusion to the collection, and no doubt you have seen it many times before, and probably even have it as a part of your collection, due to it being released so recently. Moving on to the Fourth Doctor Regenerated now, of course it is really nice to see a re-release of this sculpt as it has only ever been released before, and it does look quite strikingly different compared to the other Fourth Doctors released as a part of the series, and that standard Wave 1 sculpt that we have seen many times before. Of course the most unusual thing with this sculpt is the most striking difference in the colour, the orangey sideburns compared to the rest of the curls on the hair, which is oddly rather accurate to Tom's sideburns seen within Robot, and then of course you have that rather unusual looking head, which once again the paint application over the top of this is actually considerably quite sharp for a B&M release. And then of course moving down to the rest of the costume, we have the brand new sculpted frills, which this time round have been given a new highlight, once again seen on the original Time Capsule Fourth Doctor set. Now with the absence of a cravat or a bow tie, we just have the curls and frills of the shirt running loose, along with of course the shirt open at the very top there as well, with some nice paint application over the top of this. The rest of the costume is exactly the same to any other Third Doctor figure really, once again sharing exactly the same detail. However, this time round of course the blazer is now a dark blackish colour, and the trousers are a lighter grey, with of course the black glossy shoes at the very bottom. And it would be nice to see a Third Doctor in this costume at some point, however I do believe that that would require retooling on the next section, as this piece here is in fact a little bit different to every other Third Doctor. However, considering the B&M line seems to be doing a number of retools at the minute, it could be possible to see a Third Doctor in this costume released at some point in the future. Overall, the Fourth Doctor Regenerated and Season 12 TARDIS was certainly the best of the two TARDIS box set releases that have came out so far. I think that generally this TARDIS has a much better appearance compared to the Third Doctor TARDIS box, and it looks a better quality, certainly with the signage that has been included to make it look more accurate to the TARDIS box seen throughout Season 12. And naturally, of course, it goes without saying, if you want to find out more information about this product along with the other B&M exclusive re-release sets, then basically go and check out my product reviews, because I've pretty much covered all of the B&M re-releases that have came out over the past couple of years. As compared to the rest of the products within the series, these items are still very new additions to the collection. Well, there we have it, the penultimate episode of Doctor Who, the classic series action figures, A History. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Of course, this episode has been an ever so slightly different tone compared to some of the other episodes as a part of this series, focusing more on comparison and differences, in most cases to the original Forbidden Planet exclusive counterparts. And when it comes to paint application, some of those differences are more obvious than others. With some action figures, the paint application changes have been more subtle and harder to spot. However, with some of the other action figures, the changes have been rather visible. The likes of the Third Doctor from Invasion of the Dinosaurs, the Fourth Doctor from the Talons of Weng Chiang, and of course the Brigadier from the 1970s set that's seen not one but two different releases. However, of course, that isn't the end for this journey through Doctor Who Classic Series action figure history. Join me in the 15th part of this series as we go right up to date with the final B&M exclusive classic series action figures that have been released since 2018, as we see the B&M exclusive series turn ever so slightly more experimental, seeing the introduction of brand new head sculpts into the line for the first time in a number of years, the continuation of TARDIS exterior box variants, and of course some rather exciting variants of classic series Doctor Who action figure indeed, and even a little bit of Big Finish in there as well. So as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course check out all the other episodes as a part of this series in case you haven't already, and do of course join me next time for the final chapter of Doctor Who, the classic series action figures, A History. But until then, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.